The Sunday school lesson for November the 9th, 2025 is We've Fallen and We Can't Get Up. 2 Kings chapter 24 verses 18 through 20 and chapter 25 verses 1 through 9. Welcome, viewers and subscribers to my channel, The Backstory and More. I am Audrey. If you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school class, you are at the right place because I will share the backstory, read the lesson text, and offer a brief lesson summary. Please support the channel by subscribing and sharing this video with others. Thank you for all that you do to help this channel grow. The backstory takes us to the time frame of 597 through 586 BC. Many centuries had passed since Moses warned the Israelites of the consequences of breaking God's covenant. The prophets reminded Israel and Judah of the coming judgment. The exile of the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BC had proven the prophets' warnings true. Now, Judah too would face God's judgment. The blame for the tragedy in today's text is most directly traced to the nation's line of leadership. Were we to draw a good and evil timeline of Judah's 20 rulers since the beginning of the divided monarchy in the 10th century BC, we would see startling swings from evil to good and back again to evil. Today's lesson introduces us to the last in the line of 20 kings, a man named Zedekiah. Zedekiah's father, Josiah, was the last godly king of Judah. Josiah had 4 sons, Zedekiah being the third. Zedekiah might never have been king were it not for the untimely death of his father in battle. Following Josiah's death, his ungodly son, Jehoahaz, known as Shallum, ruled briefly before being deported to Egypt by Pharaoh. Concurrently, Pharaoh installed Eliakim, another son of Josiah, as king, changing his name to Jehoiakim. When Jehoiakim died 11 years later, he was succeeded by his son, Jehoiachin. By that time, the Babylonians were on the march, overtaking Jerusalem a scant 3 months after Jehoiakim's ascent to the throne. The Babylonians installed one of his relatives, Mattaniah, in his place as king, renaming him Zedekiah. The first 3 verses of our lesson's text are worded almost identically to that of Jeremiah 52, 1 through 3, and are very similar to 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verses 11 through 13. Verses 18 through 20. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as Jehoiakim had done. It was because of the Lord's anger that all this happened to Jerusalem and Judah. And in the end, he thrust them from his presence. Now, Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Verses 1 through 3. So in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army. He encamped outside the city and built siege works all around it. The city was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. By the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine in the city had become so severe that there was no food for the people to eat. Verses 4 through 6. Then the city wall was broken through, and the whole army fled at night through the gate between the 2 walls near the king's garden. Though the Babylonians were surrounding the city, they fled toward the Arabah. But the Babylonians' army pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. All his soldiers were separated from him and scattered, and he was captured. He was taken to the king of Babylon at Riblah, where sentence was pronounced on him. Verses 7 through 9. They killed the son of Zedekiah before his eyes. Then they put out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. On the seventh day of the fifth month, in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, an official of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. The summary is rather lengthy. When Zedekiah became king, Nebuchadnezzar made him swear before God that he would not revolt. 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 13. However, Zedekiah had allowed those surrounding him to talk him into rebelling. This violation of his oath was strongly condemned by the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 11 through 21. To thrust them from his presence meant that God's people had lost his protecting care and that they were defenseless against their enemies. In the fourth year of his reign, Zedekiah traveled to Babylon to reassure Nebuchadnezzar of his faithfulness. But almost as soon as he returned to Judah, he began to plot against the Babylonian king. In spite of the repeated warnings of Jeremiah, King Zedekiah foolishly entered an alliance with Egypt and rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. In the ninth year of Zedekiah's reign, Nebuchadnezzar began his campaign against Judah. The 10th month was in winter. This shows Nebuchadnezzar's determination as he began the military blockade of Jerusalem. Warfare in ancient times usually waited until spring and the beginning of the dry season. To move an army and its equipment into position in the rainy, cold months of winter was a hardship. After surrounding Jerusalem, Nebuchadnezzar built forts or towers from which he could attack the city. Before long, the defenders of the city were suffering a food shortage. This was followed by pestilence that took its toll. Ezekiel chapter 5, verse 12. Nebuchadnezzar's strategy was to starve the city out. After a year and a half, the strategy proved effective as the people of Jerusalem were reduced to weakness by starvation. The book of Lamentations gives some of the horrible details of the suffering that accompanied the final days of the siege. With Jerusalem weakened, King Nebuchadnezzar launched his attack. The assault was probably from the north, where the ground was level. The armed defenders, realizing they could not hold off the Babylonians once they were inside the walls, abandoned their post and fled. Under cover of darkness, Zedekiah and his whole army escaped through one of the southern gates. The Babylonians were so involved in exploiting the breach in the city walls that the king was able to slip through their lines. The king's escape efforts failed. As he and his army fled, his troops scattered. He was captured in the plains of Jericho, probably not far from where the Jordan River empties into the Dead Sea. Nebuchadnezzar had withdrawn to Riblah, leaving a general in command at Jerusalem. It provided a convenient place from which Nebuchadnezzar could supervise his campaigns in the west and still keep an eye on things back in Babylon. Zedekiah was taken to Riblah to face Nebuchadnezzar, whom he had betrayed. The last thing that Zedekiah was allowed to see was the death of his sons. Then he was blinded, perhaps with hot coals. Several years earlier, Ezekiel had prophesied that Zedekiah would be brought to Babylon, but would not see it. Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 13. The judgment on him by Nebuchadnezzar fulfilled the prophecy. We do not know why there was a month's delay between Jerusalem's fall and its destruction. Perhaps the field commanders had to await Nebuchadnezzar's decision about what to do with the city before they act. The king sent the commander of the imperial guard, literally the chief of the executioners, to supervise Jerusalem's destruction. Thank you in advance for subscribing to the channel and sharing the video with others. Stay safe and may God bless.